Bond.
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 James Bond.
We continue our look at the James Bond films with the second entry in the series, The Great From Russia with Love. What most separates From Russia from Dr. No is that it is foremost a low-key spy thriller. There are no hints of world domination or global devastation to be found here. In fact, more so than any other 007 film, with very few exceptions, it is the most arguably down-to-earth James Bond adventure, with much of the fantasy downplayed in favor of more gritty, thriller elements. Perhaps due in part to this anomaly, it is widely considered one of the best films of the franchise, with many, including Bond stars Sean Connery, Timothy Dalton, and Daniel Craig, regarding it as the crown jewel of the franchise. Following his mission in Jamaica to take down the titular Dr. No, a rare instance where a Bond film mentions the events of the previous entry, at least back then, From Russia with Love has James Bond after a Russian decoder, which is being parlayed by the enticing Tatiana Romanova, a Soviet clerk under orders to seduce and entrap him. Unbeknownst to the Russians and the British, they're both being played against each other by the evil organization Spectre, under direction of mastermind chess player Kronstein. Now, I'm gonna get my bias out of the way right up front. This is probably my favorite James Bond film. There are a few that compete, and I'm looking forward to getting to them. And maybe on this 305th go around of the series, I might finally be at a point where I'm open to the competition. But this movie was fast-tracked into production as the second feature in the series because it found its way onto a most unlikely of book lists. President John F. Kennedy listed the book, Ian Fleming's From Russia with Love, as one of his top 10 books. Unlike many of the Bond adventures, which, for the most part, it's changed over the last few years, but for the most part, they tend to be standalone adventures, this one really is a follow-up to Dr. No. There are a lot of references, nothing overt. You can go into this film not knowing much about Dr. No and follow it through, but there are a lot of references and continuity in this. Was that something that you were expecting with this film?
What I could tell you, Demosthenes, is I did not expect this whole situation to occur here in this movie.
Was that an Australian JFK?
The tater-ass motherfuckers up in here, man. That's all I'm saying. I had no idea. I mean, I knew Spectre was a thing, but I did not know they were going to just hurl themselves right into it. And actually, you know, something I don't know if it's too soon to get into it now, but I think they may have even revealed that was the plan, perhaps a little too soon. Maybe I'm attacking the grain, air quotes attacking. Maybe I'm critiquing, that's a better word, the grain of the books and such as Ian Fleming would have it. If he went right to Spectre in the second book, I would argue that was too soon. But beyond that, no, I didn't expect it. And it's a decent idea. I'm not dissing it by any stretch.
Funny enough, before I get to TJ's opinion, Spectre as an organization only really featured in 3 James Bond novels that acted like a trilogy, the Spectre trilogy. Thunderball, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and You Only Live Twice. And since 2 of those films were filmed out of order, shenanigans happened to those scripts, and we'll get to them when we get to them. In the novel is actually pretty close in theme and idea and the general unraveling of the plot, except it was a strictly Russia versus Britain scenario. You didn't have Spectre facing them off against each other like an elaborate chess game. And this film is very, very much crafted like a chess game, and it's just full of spy versus spy machinations.
I really didn't know what to expect. I went in like I went into Dr. No. Seeing it the way that I did and watching it on Netflix, you get the little blurb. So it says, you know, Spectre and, you know, vengeance for Dr. No. So I'm thinking, okay, in Dr. No, they mentioned Spectre once.
Yes.
So now in Russia with Love, I'm like, okay, so they mentioned Spectre in this little blurb, so I'm thinking Spectre's going to be all over this thing. So it actually builds the anticipation for me. I don't know how they're going to tie it, but I wanted to see how they were going to tie From Russia with Love into Dr. No. I'm like, okay, so is it like a John Wick type of revenge, or, you know, like, what is this going to be a whole bunch of headshots? I don't know what's going to happen, but I was ready to go. So I think the way that they did it, it actually enticed me a little bit more.
If you were to compare the two, I think what is most distinctive about From Russia with Love in comparison to Dr. No, other than the location and the cultural flair, is that it is foremost of that low-key spy thriller. There are no hints of elaborate world domination or global devastation. It's actually very light on fantasy, surprisingly lighter on fantasy than Dr. No. And spanning the whole series, it's probably the most down-to-earth 007 adventure. But it's structurally very, very different from practically any other film in the series. I mean, so brimming with confidence that James Bond doesn't even appear in the film until 20 minutes in. Until a quarter of the way through the film is when you actually see James Bond. It takes its time to introduce you to the villains, the henchmen. You get to see a little bit more of Spectre. You get introduced to the James Bond girl, Tatiana Romanova. God, I love that name. You set up all these colorful characters, and now you're like, okay, now we're ready for James Bond to enter.
So basically, we were already prepared for this mentally and have exercised and trained in this action, Demos, by way of you presenting me and Tokeo Jamison to the birds, where we don't see a single bird for 30 minutes.
Well, if there's somebody that does really like the birds, it's James Bond. I mean, what can I say? Were you surprised to see that Sean Connery doesn't really... And the reason I keep... doing the quote fingers is, I mean, you see somebody impersonating Bond in the first pre-credit sequence, which I thought was a great way to introduce the main henchman, Robert Shaw, Quint from Jaws.
Seriously, and I'm glad you brought that up, because as somebody who only knows him as, farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies, he comes in dropping down a British accent sounding like,
like himself. But
yeah, exactly. Like, I see that up there with hearing Hugh Laurie talk for the first time and being like, no, Dr. House doesn't have a British accent. Oh yes he does. Robert Shaw doesn't have no British accent. Oh yes he does, and it's awesome. If Robert Shaw's character opened up and rocked my world with his beautiful golden blonde hair, killing something other than a James Bond impersonation, then I would have said, where the hell Jimmy at? But considering the fact that I've seen his face on screen mentally, I was good.
The first time I saw the Bond impersonator, it was so quick, I thought that was actually Bond.
Me too.
Right? It wasn't until our villain, our big bad, pops up behind him that I actually got to look at Bond's skin, and my first question was, why is he so pasty? That was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, Bond has got no sun.
Good call. Good catch.
Like, none. So immediately when I saw that, I was like, nah, that can't be Bond, man, because Bond was just in Jamaica, baby. If there's one thing you get in Jamaica, it's a tan. So I'm like, that can't be Bond. So then they're starting to, introduce the characters. It got to the point to where I'm like, okay, I met the players. Now let's see the game. That's what I was saying. So now I saw what everybody was going to do. I had an idea of what the scheme was, and I'm like, okay, the honeypot. I see it. I see who it is now. It's cool. I'm ready. So then we got James, and he's elbow deep in some strange when we get to him. So I'm like, hey, welcome to the party.
You mentioned the honeypot. Does that imply, in fact, that James Bond is the one who holds the 100-acre wood?
No, he just got into that honey rider. That's what happened.
Yeah, he did. He did. Yeah, we can't forget old Honey Rider.
I think that this is one of the most effective pre-credit sequences. It's not one of the most explosive. It's not one of the most adventurous. But as far as foreshadowing, I mean, you've seen this guy kill James Bond already, quote unquote. So when you actually do get to their eventual confrontation, it just adds a little bit more danger to that scene. I thought it was a great way to introduce the character.
Not that Bond is flamboyant per se, but he certainly felt, to me, subdued in a lot of ways. Not that that's a bad thing. The mission called for something different. He acted differently.
I like Dr. No. I like From Russia with Love for a different reason, and I'll get more into that a little bit. But I'll say, in my opinion, Sean let me see a little bit more of James this film than he did in Dr. No. It was just there's more roundness to his character. I know a little bit more about James now than I did before the film, with regards to his professionalism, how he does the job, how he interacts with women. You know, that he's willing to put hands on a woman. Like he slapped her in the face, y'all.
Right in the face.
He's not a role model. This isn't.
He's not. He's not.
Him and Charles Barkley are like this, son. I am not a role model. I am not paid to be a role model.
They should.
Just because I have a license to kill doesn't mean I should raise your kids.
That's it. He has a license to kill. He's not a role model. This isn't the character that if I went in expecting that, it wouldn't be as fun or provocative as it is. I think this is Connery's most well-balanced performance. Probably not as electrifying as his performance in Goldfinger. This would be a close second, but this is still a vulnerable Bond before he became the superhero, the comic book superhero that he would become in later incarnations, where bullets are whizzing by, he's straightening his bow tie, and his teeth are shining and his eyes are winking.
Well, there's the biggest problem with that already. Ain't no British dude's teeth shining.
Well, yeah. Touche, good sir. Despite the fact that he slapped her in the face, this is one of the few times I think you see him in a more romantic side to his character, strangely enough. He has some sweet scenes.
After he beat her.
Well, before.
Not your best segue, homie. Not your best segue.
Not my best. Well, that's the point. He has some legitimately sweet scenes with Tatiana Romanova when he's giving her the dress, and I think that their first meeting, that expository seduction, unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, this is a scene that still is used to audition new James Bonds.
I thought they were kind of they were acted well, but what I had trouble wrapping my mind around was it was such an odd premise that I had trouble buying at first, and then as it started to play out, I'm like, go on. So it kept me rolling along. Just something. Oh, how the hell are you gonna do that? Oh, okay. So it was one of those things where it sounded ridiculous, but oddly enough, as it went on, I bought it more than more. It was very weird for me.
I mean, I didn't necessarily have as much trouble wrapping my mind around that whole thing. I got it. I like the back and forth because, yes, it was a trap.
Well, obviously it's a trap.
But the thing about it is, Bond was such a G that he got that woman to go against her country. Like, how Casanova do you have to be to make a person go against country? Like, you a G if you can make a person change guys, but you made a person completely go against their country, knowing that if they do that, they got a bullseye on their back now. Like, Bond is that dude, and I love the back and forth. And then he played it smooth. Like, if you listen to the recording, he's playing it smooth, getting the information from her. She keeps going off topic, and he knows she's trying to go off topic, but he like, nah, don't make me put hands on you again. Let's get back on topic. Speaking
of that recording, I want to hear more about James Bond's lecherous adventures with M in Tokyo.
Right?
Oh, once when I was with M in Tokyo, we had an interesting experience. Thank you, Miss Moneypenny. That's all.
I think that Danielle Bianchi is easily one of the most beautiful girls in the series. Even if her mouth is too big. Well, it was the right size for my big screen TV anyway. I think that...
Big screen TV, that's what you were sizing up.
Exactly. 67 inches, it's perfect. Anyway.
Oh my word.
When did we start talking about Tokeo Jamison?
Oh my word.
But I think the standout character in this for me is Karim freaking Bey. He is a joy. He lights up the screen every single time he's on it. He has superb wit and delivery, and is, I think, one of the best James Bond allies in the whole series.
I definitely think he was effective. I mean, he, like Quarrel, somebody that was going to introduce Bond to the culture. He was going to tie him in because Bond couldn't do it. Bond can't do it all by himself. As they call them, gypsies in the film, I'm not going to call them gypsies, the Romani. He introduced them to that culture, and then Bond gets to get involved in a cat fight. Like, that whole thing, but my cat, he got shot like a champion. And I don't know how you can get shot like a champion. Nope, I do. Watch this film, okay? And see how he got shot. He got shot, looked at it, wanted to keep shooting, looked back down at it again, touched it, realized he got shot, picked his gun back up off the ground, boom, and started shooting again with the other hand, because he a G.
That's true, but you also see him applying his own blood pack on his wound.
No, hold on, that was bad. But look, we know what it was supposed to mean.
Yeah. I was going to do what I normally do and steal TJ's take about, you're talking about G's earlier? This guy was the G in this movie, and you reiterated it beautifully. And what do I have to add to that? Absolutely nothing. And to be honest, he didn't even go out like a punk either. Like, okay, sure, he got taken out, but his dude went with him.
I have to point out my love for yet another film that in many ways inspired the tone and shape and to a degree formula of the James Bond series, North Northwest. And this film has a distinct homage / ripoff of North Northwest, the famous crop duster scene with Cary Grant, only here it was Sean Connery getting chased by a helicopter.
As soon as I saw it, and I thank you for this, because our relationship that we have has caused me to watch films that I would have not otherwise watched. My dude, as soon as I saw the helicopter, I was like, why are they ripping at it, man? Why are they taking, from Hitchcock, bro? Because I immediately saw it. But I like the way that they played with it.
It's interesting. You guys went to that direction of what are they calling back to? What I said is, oh, look who came after that. Now I understand there's twice when James Bond is being chased by a small aircraft in a vehicle. Oh, wait, he wasn't James Bond the second time, but he was Dr. Henry Jones Sr. riding around in a car with Junior, and they're getting chased by the Nazi plane. I still had a lot of fun with the scene, though. Let's not play around.
Well, Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade had a lot of James Bond callbacks. I mean, I could do a whole episode on it. They had a James Bond villain. They had a James Bond girl. Sean Connery gets shot with a Walter PPK.
If only you had a show and a platform through which you could do such an episode.
If only. One day.
Dream big, Demos! Dream big.
But I think that the one scene that really does stand out, and I was actually thinking about TJ when I watched it again, and I'll explain why, is the epic showdown between Robert Shaw and Sean Connery in the train. James Bond has had dozens of train fights following this movie. I don't think any of them has come close to topping this. I mean, it was brutal, man. It's the highlight of the film. The choreography, the sound and editing, they combine to make a cinematic battle classic. It seems battle modern in the same way that that TJ has said for some of our other reviews of Disney films, like on Dumbo or Sleeping Beauty, how they are new old films. I think that in many ways it's a new old fight. It's very modern. It feels modern by today's standards. I think in many ways it kind of set a standard for what a big screen fist fight ought to look like.
I had fun with it. I mean, I could see what the inspiration for some of the stuff is out of Bourne. What can I say except thank you, bitches?
Hashtag thank you, bitches.
Today, yeah. Don't search that either. No, today is my day to say, today it's your day to say you're welcome. There it is. And it got nothing to do with no damn boat. They're on a train.
The way that they were able to film that was actually really cool because it didn't seem so much like, I punch, you duck, and then it didn't seem so choreographed. Like it did seem really fluid in certain points of it. If someone had told me behind the scenes that Sean and the Big Bad had like a little bit of beef offset, I would have believed it based on the performance because that's the way it read to me.
They had a rematch years later in a film called Robin and Marian.
Oh, God, that version was so bad.
I didn't like that version either, but it was Sean Connery as Robin Hood and Robert Shaw as the Sheriff of Nottingham. The fight scene wasn't nearly as good.
How do you blow that?
But what do you think of the collection of villains here? Because we're introduced, you don't see his face, but we are introduced to Blofeld with the cat. I love the metaphor that he uses with the Siamese fish standing in for Russia and Britain.
I'm pretty sure Mr. Bigglesworth can kick the shit out of Blofeld's cat. Second, now I understand truly what the inspiration for the egotistical spy villain, where it comes from. The ego that Blofeld has is what birthed the villain stereotype, air quotes, device, air quotes, whatever you want to call it, of the monologue. A team takes the personality of its coach. Ergo, if Blofeld has a huge ego, it's going to trickle down, in that same way where Red Grant was starting to rock the thing. And it was clever how, James kind of weaseled his way out of, oh, look, I got the thing. Ha! It was nice.
Shouts to Blofeld. When I saw Blofeld, I immediately thought of Inspector Gadget.
Yes!
Well, that was he inspired. He inspired
right.
Claw.
Like, always going back to my childhood with some of these things, man. But I immediately thought of Claw. Just the whole collection. I mean, like I said in the beginning, this film letting us into a little bit more of Spectre. Us, seeing all the bad guys and we're going to be, I'm assuming we're going to be introduced to, more cats, It has set the stage and set my excitement for what is coming. I'm going to say, if I've been hiding in a tunnel, if I'm one of those tethers from Us that's been hiding in a tunnel, and I'm being introduced to the Marvel universe right now, and I'm just watching Incredible Hulk and Iron Man, and I get to look forward to what's coming. That's where I am right now with James Bond. Got me hyped with Dr. No, From Russia with Love, brought a whole new thing, and I've got more excitement going forward because Spectre's being introduced to me, and I see all these bad guys. It's hot.
Before we actually get to the big question of the night, I do want to point out that even though you saw him played by a different actor in Dr. No, Major Boothroyd, who gave James Bond his new Walther PPK, this is technically the first appearance of Desmond Llewellyn as Q, giving Bond his true official first gadget, the attaché case. What did you guys think of this? This was Bond's real he had a Geiger counter at one point in the first film. That doesn't count. This is his first true gadget. What did you guys think of this attaché case?
I loved it. It's got the rounds. It's got the money. Like, everything that you can need is in this case. It's got a gun that you can put together. Like, and he used that thing so awesomely. Like, every time he would use it, I was like, that's the perfect time to use that gun. So, no, like, that whole kit for this mission was perfect. The only thing that would have been better for him would have made the game unfair, and that would have been the time stone. So, yeah, we're just going to keep on going.
I know I mentioned earlier this film was lighter on fantasy than Dr. No, but it's a practical set of instruments. I mean, it's something that I can see to a degree somebody using in the field. It's not an invisible car.
When I first saw that, me being the guy that works in information technology, and he it figures that when somebody's going to test something finally, it's going to be right there in the boss's office. I was just waiting for James to be like, oh, do me like this. And then Q got tear gas in the damn face. I was waiting for a comic relief moment. But,
Can I drop a plug here? Check out James Bond Dies, my playlist, because that actually happens.
Oh. Turn the catches like that.
That's right.
And open ordinarily.
I've seen some of the James Bond Dies, and they're awesome. And bleep YouTube right in its face for trying to demonetize him. Anyways, I like Q, first of all, as a character, and I got introduced to him later in the series when he was 70 to 80 something before John Cleese eventually replaces him and keeps the character being amazing.
He did 17 films, Desmond Llewellyn.
17 Fireball films, folks.
He was a joy. The only film you don't see him in between now and The World Is Not Enough is, oddly enough, Roger Moore's first film, Live and Let Die. But
Roger Moore doesn't deserve Q. Sorry.
Actually, they had the best. I think that Roger Moore and Q probably had the best exchanges. But
well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because really, by then Q and James's relationship got to that place, right? I mean, obviously, in that day and age, Q can't be flirting with James like Moneypenny does. So they got to have something. And I just love the relation. Oh, and James, this time, try not to f it up. I have to build every one of these things, Not that, no, that's not how it goes.
Judi Dench was the first one to drop the F-bomb in this series.
That's a great point by you. But I can see an exchange or an outtake or something when Q comes out and he's like, listen, it's not like I can just go, hickus, fireball, and another one of these gets built. Try not to break it.
This is the first James Bond opening credit sequence to actually really have the beautiful dancing girl. And I think that it's also a little atypical to some of the other credit sequences, but the idea of having the belly dancer dance and interact with the projected credits, I thought was a lot of fun, especially with the instrumental version of the From Russia with Love theme being capped off by the Bond theme.
I can tell Demos liked this part of the film in particular because I believe this is what Donald Duck was thinking about in the Three Caballeros movie. That one.
I was excited because I had an idea that it was going to be a real sequel to Dr. No. I thought that this movie had a lot more action in it. I liked the film. I mean, I really did. I liked From Russia with Love. I did not know that I was going to like it as much as I did because while Dr. No was good, it was a film to get, the whole thing started. Like Kyle would say, for Incredible Hulk, for your Marvel Universe people, it's a movie to get the thing started. But From Russia with Love, for me, it really did it took it off for me. So, I am excited for the next Bond movie because of how strong this one was. Again, bringing in the Romani and introducing that culture. I show love to Bond for being one of the coolest pimps to ever do it. But his pimp hand is strong, and the Senorita Traveling Pan's opinion carries weight. So, he is on the same level as Ike Turner now. But I will say From Russia with Love gets some shown up love from Tokyo Jamison.
That does bring us to the question of, is it required viewing? And based on that, do you think that From Russia with Love is required?
Yes. I think that it is. I think that it is because you cannot watch the James Bond stuff that we got going on now and have not seen this film. Like this one, I feel like what we know, what I am going to get ready for Spectre to be, and I know that there's a movie called Spectre, right? So for me to get ready for that, I feel like I needed to see this film. Sean Connery, like I said earlier, introduced me to a little bit more of James, and I hope that they continue to build on that character art because he's showing some different stuff than what he showed in Dr. No. And again, I had no opinion really going in because I hadn't really seen any of the movies before we started with Dr. No. So I liked it. Yeah, I think it's required. I'm dropping the mic.
I'll say this about From Russia with Love. Between Dr. No and then this movie, it's hard for me to determine which I like better because I think they did different aspects better for me personally. I think this is one of those famous apples and oranges comparisons. But what this movie tells me is say the name for me again of the Bond beauty in this movie, Demos, because I'm going to ruin it.
Tatiana Romanova.
Okay, so this movie is best described for me, a case study, a metaphor would be Bond's relationship with Romanova. It's going all well and it's all lovey and smooth, but I know at some point I'm going to get that movie that slaps me in the face because it thinks I'm a spy. Okay? At the face! But that didn't happen in movie number 2 here. Again, my only real issue is I really feel like the story was kind of produced in segments. It had a very North by Northwest feel that weren't necessarily forcing me to travel a lot, but they were it was a very segmented storytelling. I'm like, well, okay, but I rolled with it and I enjoyed it. I'm not here to tell you it's required reading, and it's certainly a recommended film. I'm still surprised to hear that it's Demos' favorite of the series. Again, having only seen 2 movies, what the hell do I know? But I'm very surprised. This is the best it gets. Somehow I doubt that. which is a sign of good faith on my part.
I think that this film, in many ways, set up that this is a series that has variety. It's a sequel, and I think that one of the biggest issues that most sequels have is they try to replicate the success of the first. This one takes it in a very, very different way. It's not structured the same. The hero isn't introduced in the same way. The locations are different. The villain's plan is much more down to earth.
There's no dragon.
There's no gas-powered dragon. In my opinion, For Rush of Love, it's not just a great Bond film. I think it's a great film. It's edgier than many of the Bond films. It doesn't solely rely on the great spectacle and the action scenes. Rather, it commits to its characters and storytelling with a good mix of intrigue, suspense, and overall fantastic score. John Barry hits it out of the park with this one. He tops it, I believe, in Goldfinger, but this film has a fantastic score. The opening beats of the instrumental during the credit sequence just gets you revved up for adventure. In many ways, and this is my argument for why this is an important film to the series, because it's the soul of the series. It sets a benchmark for the 007 films to return to whenever they go too crazy, whenever they go too extreme, whenever they get to the Volcano Fortress, you only live twice, whenever they go to space, Moonraker, whenever they have invisible cars and ice palaces dying of their day. The Bond series always comes back down to earth with a spy versus spy, lower level thriller story. And that's what From Russia with Love really is. It is the true spy story of this series. I could see your point, Kyle, about how it might feel a little segmented, but I think what brings it all together is the chess motif that's played throughout the film. I think that's what gives it structure.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the whole thing where the guy is playing chess in there and the chess champion in there, and by the way, I love that room also is chess squares as well that they're in, and I'm like, it's too much, but I'd still love it. You know, if I were a Bond villain, I'd have a room like that in my house. I'm just saying, but you know, I wish every plot was this. What's his word? Practical and also intelligent and also outside the box thinking all at the same time. But that's a difficulty with any movie like this, is you got to keep pushing the envelope and you got to keep raising the stakes. But that's a very interesting thing I'm going to look for moving forward, Demos, is From Russia with Love. When the studio says, let's get back to fundamentals, this is what they come back to. And there's a worse place to start. If this is the weakest link in the chain, which it is not, I already know, you got one hell of a strong chain at this juncture, and that's where I would leave that.
All right. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that From Russia with Love is required viewing, as I do? I think I don't need to state that anymore. And so do you love From Russia with Love? Let us know in the comments below.